2. It is generally suggested that the trumpeting is here figurative, Jesus warning against ostentatiousness in making gifts of mercy. Truth. The Hebrew term emeth, often rendered truth, may designate that which is firm, trustworthy, stable, faithful, true, or established as fact. X 18. 21. 34. 6. 13. 14. 17. 4. 22. 20. Jos 2. 12. 2 ch 18. 15. 31. 20. Ne 7. 2. 9. 33. Es 9. 30. PS 15. 2. O texto e acute miritra longo, Truth 1131 Creation's Testimony. The creative works testify to the fact that God exists. But, according to Paul, even certain of those people who knew God suppressed this truth. Rather than serving God in harmony with the truth concerning his eternal power and godship, they made idols and worshipped these. Not being real gods, idols are an untruth, a lie of falsehood. Ch 10. 14. Hence, these persons, though having the truth of God, exchanged it for the lie, and venerated and rendered sacred service to the creation rather than the one who created. Their turning to the falsehood of idolatry lead them into all kinds of degraded practices. Row 1. 18-31. In contrast to man's sinfulness, the degraded practices of non-Jews and the disobedience of the Jews to God's law in no way brought harm to the Creator personally. Instead, his truthfulness, holiness. 7, 8, 22. 26. 9, 10. Heb 3. 7. 4. 11. 2 PE 2. 12-16. Jude 11. Re 2. 14. Not faithlessly putting Jehovah to the test. New 21. 5, 6. 1 Co 10. 9, as well as refraining from murmuring. New 14. 2, 36, 37. 16. 1-3, 41. 17. 5, 10. 1 Co 10. 10, 11 and sexual immorality. New 25. 1-9. 31. 16. 1 Co 10. 6, 8. Jehovah's dealings with Israel give evidence of his great power, mercy, and loving kindness, as well as his being slow to anger, though not withholding punishment when deserving. New 14. 17-20. Further, the position and ministry of Moses. New 12. 7. Heb 3. 2-6. The miraculous provision of water from the rock mass. New 20. 7-11. 1 Co 10. 4. The lifting up of the copper serpent. New 21. 8, 9. Jo 3. 14, 15, and the water of cleansing. New 19. 2-22. Heb 9. 13, 14 provided prophetic pictures that were fulfilled in Christ Jesus. The account provides background material that illuminates other scriptures. It shows on what basis Judean King Hezekiah was able to arrange the Passover on Ziviyah 14, instead of Nisan Abib 14. New 9. 10, 11. 2 ch 30. 15. The full discussion of Naziroteship. New 6. 2-21 explains why Samson and Samuel were not to have their hair cut. JG 13. 4, 5. 1 11 and why John the Baptist was not to drink intoxicating beverages. Lu 1. 15. For additional examples, compare Numbers 2. 18-23 and Psalm 80. 2. Numbers 15. 38 and Matthew 23. 5. Numbers 17. 8-10 and Hebrews 9. 4. Numbers 18. 26 and Hebrews 7. 5-9. Numbers 18. 31 and 1 Corinthians 9. 13, 14. Numbers 28. 9, 10 and Matthew 12. 5. Nun, I father of Moses' successor Joshua, son of Elishama of the tribe of Ephraim. X 33. 11. Jozo textoi acute miritra longo nut trees 516 nut trees heb. Igors. The Shulamite maiden in the Song of Solomon 6. 11 speaks of going down to the garden of nut trees. The nut trees here referred to may well have been walnut trees Jutlands regia. This tree is native to southeastern Europe and western Asia and is presently cultivated in Galilee and on the slopes of Lebanon and Mount Hermon. The Jewish historian Josephus speaks of it as growing in abundance in the area of the Sea of Galilee in the 1st century CE. The Jewish War, 3, 516, 517 x. 8. The walnut is a handsome tree, growing up to 9 meters, 30 feet high, with fragrant leaves that provide excellent shade. The wood is close-grained and prized for its beauty by cabinet makers. The fruit of the tree is encased in a husk containing tannic acid and, when boiled, produces a rich brown dye. The nut meats are highly valued for their rich taste and are pressed to produce an oil nearly equal to olive oil in quality. Nympha bride. A Christian woman living in or near Laodicea or Colossae in whose home a congregation held meetings, and to whom Paul sent greetings. Col 4. 15. Or. Sea ship. Oath. A sworn statement as to the truthfulness of what is said or that a person will or will not do a certain thing. It frequently involves an appeal to a superior, especially to God. In the Hebrew scriptures 2 words are used to denote what we understand as an oath. Shavu means an oath or a sworn statement. GE 24. 8. The 5. For the related Hebrew verb shah-ve, meaning swear, or take an oath, comes from the same root as the Hebrew word for 7. Thus swear originally meant come under the influence of 7 things. Theological Dictionary of the New Testament, edited by J. Friedrich. Translator and editor, G. Bromley, 1970, Volume V, p. 459. Abraham and Abimelech swore over 7 female lambs in making the covenant at the well of Beersheba, meaning well of the oath. Or, well of 7. GE 21. 27-32. See also GE 26. 28-33. Shavu has reference to a sworn statement on the part of a person that he will do or will not do a certain thing. The word itself carries no connotation of a curse upon the one swearing if he fails to fulfill the oath. This is the word used for the oath, or sworn statement, to Abraham by Jehovah, who never fails to fulfill his 8-17. 2. 11. Her love for her mother-in-law was such that, later, others were able to say that she was better to Naomi than 7 sons. Ru 4. 15. Arriving in Bethlehem at the commencement of the barley harvest, Ruth, in behalf of Naomi and herself, went out to the field to procure food. By chance she lighted on the field belonging to Boaz, a relative of Elimelech, o textoi acute miritra longo, Ruth 829 bling. He awoke and bent forward. Not recognizing her in the dark, he asked, "Who are you?" She replied, "I am Ruth your slave girl, and you must spread out your skirt over your slave girl, for you are a repurchaser." Ruth 3. 1-9. Ruth's actions, in compliance with Naomi's instructions, must have been in line with the customary procedure followed by women when claiming the right to brother-in-law marriage. In Lang's commentary on the Holy Scriptures, Paulus Cassel makes this observation regarding Ruth 3. 9. Undoubtedly this symbolical method of claiming the most delicate of all rights, presupposes manners of patriarchal simplicity and virtue. The confidence of the woman reposes itself on the honor of the man. The method, however, was one which could not easily be brought into operation. For every foreknowledge or pre-intimation of it would have torn the veil of silence and secrecy from the modesty of the claimant. But when it was once put into operation, the petition preferred could not be denied without disgrace either to the woman or the man. Hence, we may be sure that Naomi did not send her daughter-in-law on this errand without the fullest confidence that it would prove successful. For it is certain that to all other difficulties, this peculiar one was added in the present case. Namely, that Boaz, as Ruth herself says, was indeed a goal, a repurchaser, but not the goal. The answer of Boaz, also, suggests the surmise that such a claim was not wholly unexpected by him. Not that he had an understanding with Naomi, in consequence of which he was alone on the threshing floor. For the fact that he was startled out of his sleep, shows that the night visit was altogether unlooked for. But the thought that at some time the claim of Ruth to the right of blood relationship might be addressed to himself, may not have been strange to him. Even this conjecture, however, of what might possibly or probably take place, could not be used to relieve Ruth of the necessity of manifesting her own free will by means of the symbolical proceeding. Translated and edited by P. Scharf, 1976, p. 42. That Boaz viewed Ruth's actions as being completely virtuous is evident from his reaction. Blessed may you be of Jehovah, my daughter. You have expressed your loving kindness better in the last instance than in the first instance, in not going after the young fellows whether lowly or rich. Ruth unselfishly chose Boaz, a much older man, because of his being a repurchaser, in order to raise up a name for her deceased husband in her mother-in-law. As it would have been a natural thing for a young woman like Ruth to prefer a younger man, Boaz viewed this as an even better expression of her loving kindness than her choosing to stick with her aged mother-in-law. Ruth 3:10. Doubtless Ruth's voice must have reflected some anxiety, prompting Boaz to reassure her. Now, my daughter, do not be afraid. All that you say I shall do for you, for everyone in the gate of my people is aware that you are an excellent woman. The hour being late, Boaz instructed Ruth to lie down. However, both of them got up while it was still dark, evidently to avoid starting any rumor that would cast a bad reflection on either one of them. Boaz also gave Ruth 6 measures of barley. This may have signified that, just a narrative showing how the God-fearing Moabitess Ruth was blessed by Jehovah by becoming part of the unbroken messianic line leading to King David's setting is during the time of the Judges. Writing was likely completed about 1090 BCE. Ruth decides to stay with Naomi and her God, Jehovah 1:22 Childless and widowed, Ruth and Orpah accompany their mother-in-law Naomi, widow of Elimelech, as she departs from Moab to return to Judah. Dissuaded by Naomi's words regarding the bleak prospects for remarriage, Orpah turns back. Ruth is undeterred. She declares that Naomi's people will otextoi acute miritra longo. Ruth, Book of 830. As 6 working days were followed by day of rest, Ruth's day of rest was at hand, for he would see to it that she would have a resting place. Ruth 3:11-15, 17, 18. Upon Ruth's arrival, Naomi, perhaps not recognizing the woman seeking admittance in the dark, asked, "Who are you, my daughter?" Or, it may be that this question pertained to Ruth's possible new identity in relationship to her repurchaser. Ruth 3:16. Later, when the nearer relative refused to perform brother-in-law marriage, Boaz promptly did so. Thus Ruth became the mother of Boaz's son Obed and an ancestress of King David and also of Jesus Christ. Ruth 4:1-21. Mount 1:5-16. Ruth, Book of. This Bible book takes its name from one of its principal characters, Ruth the Moabitess. The narrative shows how Ruth became an ancestress of David by undergoing brother-in-law marriage with Boaz in behalf of her mother-in-law Naomi. The appreciation, loyalty, and the trust in Jehovah that were manifested by Boaz, Naomi, and Ruth permeate the account. Ruth 1:8, 9, 16, 17. 2. 4, 10-13, 19, 20. 3. 9 and of extreme wickedness. 32. 32. IPSO 1. 10. 3. 9. 23. 14. S 16. 46-56. See Gomorrah. Concerning a Jewish city that would reject the good news, Jesus said, "It will be more endurable for the land of Sodom and Gomorrah on Judgment Day than for that city." Mount 10. 15. 11. 23, 24. Of course, Judah 7 says that Sodom and Gomorrah placed before us as a warning example by undergoing the judicial punishment of everlasting fire. so Jesus' statement evidently was simply making use of hyperbole to emphasize how unlikely it was that people from certain first-century Jewish cities would repent even on Judgment Day. In a spiritual sense. Revelation 11:3-8 says that the corpses of God's two witnesses lay in the broad way of the great city called in a spiritual sense Sodom and Egypt. Isaiah's prophecy 1:8-10 likens Zion or Jerusalem to Sodom and calls her rulers dictators of Sodom. However, about 96 CE, when John was given the revelation vision of events to occur in the future, the typical city of Jerusalem had been destroyed long before. In 70 CE the reference therefore must be to great city or organization, an antitypical Jerusalem, pictured by unfaithful Jerusalem of old. Soldier. A person who serves in an army. In the Hebrew scriptures military personnel are often precisely designated according to the specific function they served. Cavalrymen X 14. 9, runners 1 Sa 22. 17, slingers 2 Chi 3. 25, men handling the lance and shield 2 Ch 25. 5, shooters 2 Ch 35. 23, archers job 16. 13, or bowmen Issa 21. 17. The Greek word for soldier is stramiddle.otes. See army. During the time of Roman domination of Judea, soldiers were a common sight there. The fact that an army officer at Capernaum could say, "For I have soldiers under me," indicates that soldiers were stationed there under his command. Mount 8. 5-9 Roman troops were stationed in the Tower of Antonia in Jerusalem, serving as a point of control over the Jews. The military commander there when Paul made his last visit to Jerusalem rescued him from a mob, and again the next day from the rioting Pharisees and Sadducees. Act 21. 30-35. 22. 23, 24. 23. 10 When a plot against Paul's life was revealed, the commander supplied an escort of 70 horsemen, 200 soldiers, and 200 spearmen to take Paul as far as Antipatris, the horsemen going on with him from there to Caesarea. Act 23. 12-33. Jewish soldiers. There were also Jewish soldiers, among them being those who owe textoi acute miritra longo. Solomon 986 right with the governor if he heard of the disappearance of Jesus' body. Mount 28. 14. The first Gentile Christian. About 3.5 years later, it was a Roman soldier, a centurion, who sent 2 of his house servants and a devout soldier to invite Peter to Caesarea. At Peter's preaching, Cornelius and his household, doubtless including the devout soldier in his service, received the outpouring of Holy Spirit and became the first members of the Christian congregation taken from among the Gentiles. Act 10. 1, 7, 44-48. Peter's deliverance. The Apostle Peter was later arrested by order of Herod Agrippa I and was imprisoned under 4 shifts of 4 soldiers each. On each shift 2 soldier guards watched the prison door, while 2 personally guarded Peter, who was chained to them, 1 on each side. An angel appeared in the night, releasing Peter from his chains and freeing him from the prison. This created a stir among the soldiers, and Herod, after examining those guards who were responsible, had them led off to punishment, probably to be put to death according to the Roman custom. Act 12. 4-10, 18, 19. Kindness shown to Paul. When the Apostle Paul was taken by ship to Rome, because of his appeal to Caesar, he was placed in the custody of a detachment of soldiers under the command of an army officer named Julius of the band of Augustus. This man treated Paul with kindness and permitted him to go to his friends and enjoy their care. At first he evidently did not accept Paul as having God's guidance, and therefore he gave more heed to the ship's owner and to the pilot. But after a great tempest drove the ship along and tossed it violently for days, when Paul related a vision he had in which the lives of all on the ship were guaranteed, the officer and his men listened to Paul. When the boat began to break up near Malta, the soldiers prepared to kill all the prisoners, but the officer Julius, desiring to bring Paul safely through, restrained them. Act 27. 1, 3, 9-11, 20-26, 30, 31, 39-44 In Rome, Paul was permitted to live in his own hide house with a soldier guarding him. Act 28. 16, 30. Symbolic use. In defending his apostleship in his letter to the congregation at Corinth, Paul wrote, "Who is it that ever serves as a soldier at his own expense?" 1 Cor 9. 7 or 27, 28. 34. 4. Consider also Satan's offer to Jesus at Mount 4. 8. Another action appearing to have similar legal flavor was walking across the land or entering it for the purpose of taking possession. GE 13. 17. 28. 13. In certain ancient documents, the number of trees on a piece of land was listed at each real estate sale. Compare GE 23. 17, 18. Custody. Legal responsibility came when an individual promised to keep or guard a person, animal, or thing. GE 30. 31. Reuben, as the firstborn of Jacob, was responsible in the case of Joseph's disappearance. GE 37. 21, 22, 29, 30. The custodian was to give sufficient care to what was in his charge. He had to restore animals stolen, but not those that died of themselves or that were lost through events beyond his control, such as a raid by armed sheep rustlers. If an animal was killed by a wild beast, evidence of the torn animal had to be produced to clear the custodian of responsibility. GE 37. 12-30, 32, 33. X 22. 10-13. Slavery. Slaves might be purchased or might be such through birth to slave parents. GE 17. 12, 27. Slaves could enjoy a very honored position in the patriarchal household, as was the case with Abraham's servant Eliezer. GE 15. 2. 24. 1-4. Law of God to Israel. The Law of Moses. Jehovah gave Israel the law through Moses as mediator, in the wilderness of Sinai. 1513 BCE. At the inauguration of the law at Mount Horeb there was an awe-inspiring demonstration of Jehovah's power. X 19. 16-19. 20. 18-21. Hope 12. 18-21, 25, 26. The covenant was validated by the blood of bulls and goats. The people presented communion offerings, and they heard the book of the covenant read to them, after which they agreed to be obedient to all that Jehovah had spoken. Many of the early patriarchal laws were incorporated in the law given through Moses. X 24. 3-8. Hope 9. 15-21. See Covenant. The first 5 books of the Bible, Genesis through Deuteronomy, are often referred to as the law. Sometimes this term is used with reference to the entire inspired Hebrew scriptures. Generally, however, the Jews considered the entire Hebrew scriptures to be composed of 3 sections, the Law of Moses, the Prophets, and Psalms. Lu 24. 44 commands that came through the prophets were binding upon Israel. Jehovah was identified in the law as absolute sovereign and also as King. O text to acute miritra longo. Theocratic government. Jehovah God is the supreme sovereign. X 19. 5. 1 So 12. 12. ISO 33. 22 King to sit on Jehovah's throne, representing him. 1 Ch 29. 23. To 17. 14, 15 Other officers. Chieftains of tribes. Chiefs of thousands, of hundreds, of fifties, and of tens were selected on the basis of their fear of God, as well as their trustworthiness and incorruptibility. X 18. 21, 25. New 1. 44 Respect was due to all who exercised God-given authority. Officers, priests, judges, parents. X 20. 12. 22. 28. To 17. 8-13 Religious obligations. These were summed up in the greatest commandment in the law. To love Jehovah with one's whole heart, mind, soul, and strength. To 6. 5. 10. 12. Mr. 12. 30 Worship was to go only to Jehovah. X 20. 3. 22. 20. To 5. 7. Love should be a powerful motivating factor in one's relationship with God. 6. 5, 6, 10, 12, 30. 16. All were to fear God, so as not to disobey him. 20. 20. 5. 29. God's name was not to be taken up in a worthless way. 20. 7. 5. 11. They could approach him only in the way he approved. 3. 10. 10. 1-3. 16. 1. All were obligated to keep the Sabbath. 20. 8-11. 31. 12-17. Congregating for worship. 31. 10-13. All males were required to assemble 3 times a year. Passover and Festival of Unfermented Cakes, Festival of Weeks, and Festival of Booths. 16. 16. 23. 1-43. Man who deliberately neglected to keep Passover was cut off. 9. 13. Supporting priesthood. Levites received a tithe, or tenth, of all the produce of the land from the other tribes. 18. 21-24. Levites had to give to the priesthood a tithe made up of the very best of what they received. 18. 20. 46-49. Act 2. 17. Compare Act 18. 26. 21. 9. Row 16. 3. These early Christian preachers were not highly educated men by worldly standards. The Sanhedrin perceived the apostles Peter and John to be men unlettered and ordinary. Act 4. 13. Concerning Jesus himself, the Jews fell to wondering, saying, How does this man have a knowledge of letters, when he has not studied at the schools? Joe 7. 15. Secular historians noted the same points. Celsus, the first writer against Christianity, makes it a matter of mockery, that laborers, shoemakers, farmers, the most uninformed and clownish of men, should be zealous preachers of the gospel. The history of the Christian religion. O texto e acute miritra longo, preacher, preaching 673. 10. Spoken of as preaching Christ Jesus. Act 8. 5. 9. 20. 19. 13. 1 Co 1. 23. An examination of their preaching makes clear that their preaching Christ was not done so as to isolate him in the minds of their listeners as though he was somehow independent or detached from God's kingdom arrangement and overall purpose. Rather, they proclaimed what Jehovah God had done for and through his Son, how God's purposes were being fulfilled and would be fulfilled in Jesus. 2 Co 1. 19-21. Thus, all such preaching was to God's own praise and glory, through Jesus Christ. Row 16. 25-27. Their preaching was not performed simply as a duty, nor did their heralding consist merely of speaking out a message in a formal way. It sprang from heartfelt faith and was done with the desire to honor God and with the loving hope of bringing salvation to others. Row 10. 9-14. 1 Co 9. 27. 2 Co 4. 13. Therefore the preachers were willing to be treated as foolish by the worldly wise or be persecuted as heretics by the Jews. 1 Co 1. 21-24. 5. 11. For this reason, too, their preaching was accompanied by the use of reasoning and persuasion to help the hearers to believe and exercise faith. Acts 17. 2. 28. 23. 1 Co 15. 11. Paul speaks of himself as being appointed a preacher and apostle and teacher. 2-1. 11. These Christians were not salaried heralds, but were dedicated worshippers giving of themselves, giving their time and their strength to the preaching activity. 1-2. 9. Since all who became disciples also became preachers of the word, the good news spread rapidly, and by the time Paul wrote his letter to the Colossians c. 60-61 CE, or about 27 years after Christ's death, he could speak of the good news which was preached in all creation that is under heaven. Col 1. 23. Hence, Christ's prophecy of the preaching of the good news in all the nations saw a certain fulfillment prior to the destruction of Jerusalem and its temple in 70 CE. Mount 24. 14. Mr. 13. 10. Map, Volume 2, p. 744. Jesus' own words, as well as the book of Revelation, written after that destruction, points to greater fulfillment of this prophecy at the time of Christ's beginning to exercise kingdom rule and preliminary to the destruction of all adversaries of that kingdom, a logical time for a great heralding work to be accomplished. Read 12. 7-12, 17. 14. 6, 7. 19. 5, 6. 22. 17. What results should Christian preachers expect for their efforts? Paul's experience was that some began to believe the things said. Others would not believe. Act 28. 24. All Christian preaching, based on God's word, requires a response of some kind. It is vigorous, dynamic, and above all, it presents an issue on which people must take sides. Some become active opposers of the kingdom message. Act 13. 50. 18. 5, 6. Others listen for a time, but eventually they turn back for various reasons. Joe 6. 65, 66. Still others accept the good news and act upon it. Act 17. 11. Luke 8. 15. From house to house. Jesus went right to the people with the kingdom message, teaching them publicly and in their homes. Mount 5. 1. 9. 10, 28, 35. When he sent out his early disciples to preach, he directed them. Into whatever city or village you enter, search out who in it is deserving. Mount 10. 7, 11-14. Such searching out would reasonably include going to the people's homes, where deserving persons would heed the message and the disciples would find lodging for the night. Luke 9. 1-6. On a later occasion Jesus designated 70 others and sent them forth by twos in advance of him into every city and place to which he himself was going to come. These were not just to preach in public places, but were also to contact people at their homes. Jesus instructed them. Wherever you enter into a house, say first, may this house have peace. Suffered a severe blow when Jehovah went killing their vine with a plague of hail. PS 78. 47. 105. 33. The spies who entered the promised land, a land of vines and figs and pomegranates, brought back from the torrent valley of Eshcol a cluster of grapes so large that it had to be carried on a bar between two men. 8. 8. New 13. 20, 23, 26. Grape clusters from this region are commonly said to weigh 4.5 to 5.5 kilograms, 10 to 12 pounds. One cluster was recorded as weighing 12 kilograms, 26 pounds. Another, more than 20 kilograms, 44 pounds. Besides the torrent valley of Eshcol, other grape-growing regions mentioned in the Bible are Engedi by the Dead Sea. 1. 14, Shechem JG 9. 26, 27, Silo JG 21. 20, 21, and across the Jordan, Sibmah, Heshbon, and Elilah. Issa 16. 7-10. Jah 48. 32. Planting and care. Vineyards were often planted on hillsides. It was customary to fence or wall in vineyards. New 22. 24. PR 24. 30, 31, and also to build booths or watchtowers. Issa 1. 8. 5. 2. To protect the vineyards against thieves or animal intruders such as foxes and wild boars. PS 80. 8, 13. 2. 15. The Mosaic law allowed a passerby to eat his fill, but not to carry any off in a receptacle, for it would be thievery. De 23. 24. For convenience a winepress and a vat were dug near the vineyard, since usually the bulk of the crop was crushed to make wine. Issa 5. 2. Mr. 12. 1. Sea wine and strong drink. Of course, fresh grapes were eaten in considerable quantity, and some sun-dried raisins were produced. 1 Sir 25. 18. 30. 12. 2 Sir 16. 1. 1 ch 12. 40. Ancient vineyards were laid out in several different ways. Sometimes the vines were systematically planted in rows 2.5 meters, 8 feet or more apart in well-prepared soil. No other seeds were to be planted in a vineyard. According to the Mosaic law, the trees, such as the fig, might be planted there. De 22. 9. Lu 13. 6, 7. Sometimes the vines were allowed to grow along the ground down a hillside, with only the clusters being raised by forked sticks, but more often the vines were trained over wooden arbors or piles of stones. Pruning is necessary for production of good grapes. Jesus said that every branch not bearing fruit he takes away, and every one bearing fruit he cleans by pruning, that it may bear more fruit. Job 15. 2. The pruning of productive branches and the cutting off of fruitless o textoi acute miritra longo. Vinegar 1156 9. 27. Issa 16. 10. J 25. 30. Cypress. It was also a joyful time for the poor and alien residents of the land, who were permitted to glean the vineyards after the general harvest. The 19. 10. The 24. 21. The opposite was also true. When the vines had withered, or when they produced no grapes, or when the vineyards became desolate wastes of thorns, these were calamitous times of great sorrow. Issa 24. 7. 32. 10, 12, 13. J8. 13. Sabbatical laws required owners to leave their vineyards uncultivated, and pruned, and unharvested every 7th year and during the Jubilee. La 25. 3-5, 11. But during those years any person's owners, slaves, aliens, the poor, as well as the animals, were welcome to eat freely of what grew by itself. X 23. 10, 11. La 25. 1-12. Illustrative and figurative use. The familiarity of the grapevine. The general knowledge people had of its cultivation and productivity as well as the vintage and the gleaning activities connected therewith, made it an object of frequent reference by Bible writers. Vineyards producing an abundance of fruitage reflected Jehovah's blessing. La 26. 5. Hagg 2. 19. Zakat 12. Mal 3. 11. PS 128. 3. The expression sitting everyone under his own vine and under his own fig tree became proverbial of peace and security. 1 Kai 4. 25. 2 Kai 18. 31. Issa 36. 16. Mik 4. 4. Zek 3. 10. Unproductive vines would be a manifestation of God's disfavor. De 28. 39. Israel was like the rapes in the wilderness, but it became like a degenerate vine. Ho 9. 10. 10. 1. Like a foreign vine producing wild grapes. Isophanes, as a form of divination, was specifically prohibited by God's law to Israel. De 19. 26. De 18. 10. But apostates like Judean king Manasseh did look for amends. 2 Kai 17. 17. 21. 6. Since this practice is condemned in the scriptures, evidently faithful Joseph's comment about use of his silver cup to read omens was merely part of the ruse. G 44. 5, 15. By making the comment, Joseph represented himself, not as one having faith in Jehovah, but as an administrator of a land where false worship prevailed. He thus gave no hint of having anything in common with his brothers and kept his true identity concealed from them. See divination. Omer. A dry measure amounting to 1/10 of an FR. X 16. 16, 18, 22, 32, 33, 36. The FR measure is calculated at 22L20 dry quart on the basis of archaeological evidence concerning the capacity of the corresponding liquid measure bath. Compares 45. 10, 11. An omer measure would therefore equal 2.2L2 dry quart. A comparison of the Hebrew text of Exodus 29. 40 and Numbers 28. 5 reveals that a 10th part means 1/10 of an FR, or an Ummah. This provides a basis for rendering the Hebrew 10th Mount of Olives numbers represent height in meters. Mount Scopus 820, Mount of Olives 812 t. V. OFKIDRON Temple Area 740, Mount of Offense 740, Olmri 554 Partas 10th of an FR. New 15. 4, at, NW, Ro, JP. Omri 1. Fifth listed among the 9 sons or descendants of Becca, a son of Benjamin. 1 ch 7. 6, 8. 2. Prince of the tribe of Issachar during David's reign. Son of Michael. 1 ch 27. 18, 22. 3. Sixth king of the northern 10-tribe kingdom of Israel. Nothing of Omri's ancestry is recorded, not even the name of his father or tribe. Omri founded the third dynasty of Israel. Those of Jeroboam and Baasha preceded, his son Ahab and grandsons Ahijah and Jehoram succeeding him, all 4 totaling some 46 years c. 951-905 BCE on the throne. Omri's granddaughter Athaliah ruled 6 years on the throne of Judah. 2 Chi 8. 26. 11. 1-3. 2 ch 22. 2 Jehu, who wiped out the house of Ahab and established the next dynasty of Israel, is called a son that is, successor of Omri on the black obelisk of Shalmaneser 3. Ancient Near Eastern Texts, edited by J. Pritchard, 1974, p. 281. In fact, the Assyrians continued calling Israel the land of Omri and Israel's kings the house of Omri long after his descendants had ceased ruling. A tribute to his power. Omri came to the throne, not by inheritance, but by the sword. He had been chief of Israel's army under King Elah and perhaps under his predecessor Baasha when Zimri, chief of half the chariots, overthrew Elah, took the kingship for himself, and wiped out the house and friends of Baasha. As soon as this was reported to the Israelite army, at the time camped against the Philistines at Gibbethon, all Israel, doubtless the tribal heads in the camp, made Omri their king. At once they withdrew from Gibbethon and stormed Zimri's capital Tirzah. Zimri, seeing the hopelessness of his cause, burned down the king's house over himself, tragically ending his 7-day rule. 1 Chi 16. 8-20. But a new rival to Omri presented himself, Tibni the son of Ginath. The populace remained divided for about 4 years, during which time civil war presumably raged until Omri's supporters defeated Tibni's, securing undisputed rule for Omri. Zimri had died in the 27th year of King Asa of Judah c. 951 BCE? 1 Chi 16. 15-18. Finally, in the 31st year of Asa c. 947 BCE, Tibni died in some unstated way, leaving Omri about 8 years of sole rule. 1 Chi 16. 21-23, 29. See chronology. Mightiness is attributed to King Omri. 1 Chi 16. 27. According to lines 4-8 of the Moabite stone, Omri brought Moab into subjection, which domination Ahab continued. 2 Chi 3. 4. Midway in his reign, Omri wisely moved his capital away from Tirzah, which he had found so easy to capture. He purchased the mountain owned by Shema, well suited for fortifying, and there he built a new city, Samaria, which was able to withstand long sieges. 1 Chi 16. 23, 24. Cuneiform inscriptions likewise call him its founder, and it was also his burial place. 1 Chi 16. 28. In the course of his reign, Omri met with various setbacks, such as having to surrender some cities to the king of Syria. 1 Chi 20. 34. On having to pay tribute to Assyria, he being the first Israelite king to do so. Religiously, Omri continued the downward trend of the northern kingdom. He continued Jeroboam's idolatry. In fact, he kept doing what was bad in the eyes of Jehovah and came to do worse than all who were pride in the scriptures to 1 Jehovah God, 2 Jesus Christ, 3 angels, 4 men and animals, 5 things, 6 periods of time or occasions, and 7 land possessions. Sometimes the Hebrew word for sanctify was used in the sense of preparing or making oneself ready or in fit condition. Jehovah commanded Moses to say to the complaining Israelites, "Sanctify yourselves for tomorrow, as you will certainly eat meat. New 11. 18 Before Israel crossed the Jordan River, Joshua ordered, Sanctify yourselves, for tomorrow Jehovah will do wonderful things in your midst. Jos 3. 5 In all cases the term has a religious, spiritual, and moral sense. It can denote the getting away from anything that displeases Jehovah or appears bad in his eyes, including physical uncleanness. God said to Moses, Go to the people, and you must sanctify them today and tomorrow, and they must wash their mantles. Because on the third day Jehovah will come down before the eyes of all the people upon Mount Sinai. Acts 19. 10, 11 The word is used to mean purifying or cleansing, as at 2 Samuel 11. 4, which reads, She was sanctifying herself from her uncleanness. Jehovah told Israel that they should be separate from the nations of the world and clean from their practices. He gave Israel laws to keep them set apart, including the laws defining what was clean and what was unclean for eating. Then he gave them the reason. For I am Jehovah your God. And you must sanctify yourselves and you must prove yourselves holy, because I am holy. Lunar 11. 44. Jehovah God. Jehovah God is holy and absolutely clean. As the Creator and universal sovereign, he has the right to the exclusive worship of all of his creatures. Therefore he says that he will demonstrate his holiness, acting to sanctify himself and his name before the eyes of all creation. I shall certainly magnify myself and sanctify myself and make myself known before the eyes of many nations. And they will have to know that I am Jehovah. S 38. 23 Those who desire his favor and life must sanctify him and his name, that is, they must hold that name in its proper place as separate from and higher than all others. 22. 32. Isa 8. 13. 29. 23 Jesus taught his followers to pray as the foremost thing. Our Father in the heavens, let your name be sanctified or, be held sacred. Be treated as holy. Mount 6. 9, FTN. Jesus Christ. Jehovah God selected his only begotten Son and sent him to earth to do a special work in behalf of God's name and to give his life as a ransom for humankind. But he was not received and respected by the Jewish Otextoi Acute Muritra Longo, Sanctification 857 angels. The angels of God are called by Jesus holy angels, sanctified, set apart for Jehovah's holy use. Mr. 8. 38. Lu 9. 26. Compare PS 103. 20. They appear in the sacred presence of Jehovah, beholding his face. Mount 18. 10. Lu 1. 19. Men and animals. In times past God has chosen certain persons whom he desired to use for his exclusive service, and he sanctified them. When he determined to use the males of the tribe of Levi to take care of the sacred tabernacle and its services, he said to Moses, As for me, look, I do take the Levites from among the sons of Israel in place of all the firstborn opening the womb of the sons of Israel. And the Levites must become mine. For every firstborn is mine. In the day that I struck every firstborn in the land of Egypt I sanctified to myself every firstborn in Israel from man to beast. They should become mine. I am Jehovah. In order to release the firstborn of the other 11 tribes, the Israelites were required to give in exchange all the males of the tribe of Levi. Then they had to give 5 shekels $11 to the sanctuary for every male firstborn above the total number of male Levites. This released the firstborn ones from being set apart for Jehovah's exclusive service. New 3. 12, 13, 46-48. After this, all male firstborn ones opening the womb were considered to be sanctified, but were presented at the temple and redeemed by a payment of 5 shekels $11. Acts 13. 2. La 12. 1-4. New 18. 15, 16 Those under Nazirite vows were sanctified for the period of their vow. New 6. 1-8 The firstborn of domestic animals were also sanctified, to be sacrificed or, in some cases, to be redeemed. The 15. 19. See firstborn, firstling. The priesthood. Jehovah also purposed to set aside an exclusive family within the tribe of Levi to serve as his priests of sacrifice, namely, Aaron and his sons and their male descendants. Acts 28. 1-3, 41. They were then sanctified with fitting sacrifices in a symbolic series of acts described in Exodus chapter 29. Jehovah's everlasting high priest, Jesus Christ, and his fellow priests, are under priests, namely those who follow Christ's footsteps and whom God anoints to be members of Christ's body, are also sanctified. Too loud a time for this world and its god, Satan the devil, to exist and develop in their wickedness, and he has set a time for their destruction. 2 Co 4. 4. 2 P 3. 7. The prophetic prayer of the psalmist was, that people may know that you, whose name is Jehovah, you alone are the most high over all the earth. PS 83. 18. Jehovah himself has sworn. To me every knee will bend down, every tongue will swear, saying, surely in Jehovah there are full righteousness and strength. IPSO 45. 23, 24. How far the issue reached. How far-reaching was the issue? Since man had been induced to sin, and since an angel had sinned, the question reached up to and included God's heavenly creatures, even God's only begotten Son, the one closest to Jehovah God. This one, who always did the things pleasing to his Father, would be most anxious to serve for the vindication of Jehovah's sovereignty. Job 8. 29. Held 1. 9. God selected him for this assignment, sending him to the earth, where he was born as a male child through the Virgin Mary. Luke 1. 35. He was perfect, and he maintained that perfection and blamelessness throughout his life, even to a disgraceful death. Job 7. 26. Before his death he said, now there is a judging of this world. Now the ruler of this world will be cast out. Also, the ruler of the world is coming, and he has no hold on me. Job 12. 31. 14. 30. Satan could get no hold so as to break Christ's integrity, and he was judged as having failed, ready to be cast out. Jesus conquered the world. Job 16. 33. Jesus Christ, vindicator of the righteousness of Jehovah's sovereignty. So Jesus Christ, in a totally perfect way, proved the devil a liar, completely settling the question, will any man be faithfully to God under whatever test or trial may be brought against him? Jesus therefore was appointed by the sovereign God as the executor of his purposes, the one to be used to destroy wickedness, including the devil, from the universe. This authority he will exercise, and every knee will bend and every tongue openly acknowledge that Jesus Christ is Lord to the glory of God the Father. PHP 2. 5-11. Heb 2. 14. 1 Job 3. 8. In the dominion granted the Son, he rules in his Father's name, bringing to nothing all government and all authority and power that stand against Jehovah's sovereignty. The Apostle Paul reveals that Jesus Christ then offers the greatest tribute to Jehovah's sovereignty, for, when all things will have been subjected to him, then the Son himself will also subject himself to the one who subjected all things to him, that God may be all things to everyone. 1 Cor 15. 24-28. The book of Revelation shows that after the end of Christ's 1,000-year reign, in which he puts down all authority that attempts to rival Jehovah's sovereignty, the devil will be loosed for a short time. He will try to revive the issue, but no long grant of time will be given for that which is already settled. Satan and those following him will be completely annihilated. Read 20. 7-10. Others who uphold Jehovah's side. Though Christ's faithfulness thoroughly proved God's side of the issue, others are permitted to share in this. PR 27. 11. The effects of Christ's integrity keeping course, including his sacrificial death, are pointed out by the Apostle. Through one act of justification o texto e acute miritra longo, soa, sowing 1013 Jehovah's blessing. Jehovah is the one providing the seed and the growing process, as well as the sunshine and rain, by which the field produces many times the quantity that is planted. 2 Sa 23. 3, 4. IPSO 55. 10. All mankind, whether righteous or wicked, thus receive benefits from the Creator. Mount 5. 45. Act 14. 15-17. However, Jehovah God does not generally exercise specific control over the factors that make growth possible. Thus wicked persons at times may enjoy a bountiful harvest, whereas righteous ones, because of experiencing unfavorable conditions, may have a crop failure. Compare Job 21. 7-24. On the other hand, when it suits his purpose, Jehovah can bless the sower and bring him abundant crops, or he can cause a scarcity of fruitage, depending upon the sower's faithfulness and obedience to him. For example, Jehovah purposed to make Israel a great and numerous nation in the promised land, so he blessed his obedient servants bountifully. When Isaac was sojourning in Canaan, even though he was harassed by the natives of the land, Jehovah blessed him so that his sowing resulted in a harvest of up to 100 measures from 1 measure sown. GE 26. 12. The spiritual condition of Israel determined the kind of harvest they received. Jehovah said to them before they entered the promised land, "If you continue walking in my statutes and keeping my commandments, and you do carry them out, your threshing will certainly reach to your grape gathering, and the grape gathering will reach to the sowing of seed. The crops would be so bountiful that the harvest would not be finished before the time to sow the next crop." Compare Am 9. 13. On the other hand, God warned, "If you will not listen to me nor do all these commandments," only with regard to a written message. 1 Co 5. 9. Confidential letters were usually sealed. 1 Kai 21. 8 Sanballat's disrespectful action in sending an open letter to Nehemiah may have been intended to cause the false charges set forth therein to become public knowledge. Ne 6. 5. In addition to papyrus, materials employed for letter writing in ancient times included a stack of small pieces of broken pottery or earthenware and clay tablets. Thousands of clay tablets have been found in Babylonia and other regions. Washed and cleaned, smooth clay was made into a tablet and, while still wet, it was imprinted by means of a stylus forming wedge-shaped cuneiform characters. These tablets were often enclosed in clay envelopes. In the case of contracts, the text was sometimes repeated on the envelope. The envelopes were sealed and then baked in a kiln or dried in the sun to make them hard and durable. See archaeology. Letter writing was often done by professional scribes. As in the Persian court, such scribes were usually on hand to take down official government correspondence. As 8. 9. As 4. 8 scribes were also to be found in the marketplaces near city gates, where they could be engaged by the populace to write letters and to record business transactions. Letters were sometimes delivered by messengers to Kai 19. 14, runners 2 ch 30. 6, or couriers as 3. 13. 8. 14. Postal service itself seems to have been restricted to official correspondence down to Roman times. So average persons had to rely on traveling acquaintances or merchants to deliver their letters. Anciently, letters of recommendation were also used. However, the Apostle Paul did not need such letters to or from the Christians at Corinth to prove that he was a minister. He had helped them to become Christians and therefore could say, "You yourselves are our letter, inscribed on our hearts, and known and being read by all mankind." 2 Co 3. 1-3. In the 1st century CE, letters from Paul, James, Peter, John, Jude, and the governing body in Jerusalem contributed to the growth and the preservation of the unity and cleanness of the Christian congregation. Act 15. 22-31. 16. 4, 5. 2 Co 7. 8, 9. 10. 8-11. Letushim the middle dot ushim, possibly from a root meaning sharpen. Hammer. Forge. A name appearing among the descendants of Abraham and Keturah through Dedan. GE 25. 3. This name has the plural Hebrew ending im, as do the names as Shurim and Loamim appearing in the same O text to acute Miritra Longo, Levi 240. Ancient times to achieve horizontal accuracy when building walls and various structures, while the plummet was used to assure vertical accuracy. Egyptian masons seem to have employed a level shaped like the letter A with a short plumb line suspended from the apex. Evidently, when the hanging line coincided with the center mark on the crossbar, this indicated that the surface on which it was placed was level. The scriptures furnish no description of leveling instruments.